Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with a German engineer who had just returned from a 3-month work trip to Burkina Faso. He said, I went there with the mentality of a Western expert who would advise a developing nation on mineral extraction technology. But what I witnessed there completely changed my perspective on Africa. Ibrahim Traoré and the people of Burkina Faso are carrying out a revolution that even we in Europe have much to learn from. The story he told me about the ongoing phosphate revolution in Burkina Faso is truly incredible. They are not only solving their own famine, but are also becoming the fertilizer supplier for all of West Africa. To understand why this is so earth-shattering, we must go back to 2010, when Africa was mired in the most severe food crisis in modern history. Burkina Faso was once one of the poorest countries in the world, where 80% of the population depended on agriculture, yet rice yield was only 1.2 tons per hectare, 3 times lower than the world average. The first problem was the complete dependence on imported fertilizer. Every year, Burkina Faso had to spend $350 million to import fertilizer from Morocco and Europe, while 45% of its population lived below the poverty line. The price of imported fertilizer was 4 times the world price, making it unaffordable for farmers, leading to low productivity and an endless cycle of poverty. This period of dependence lasted for 60 years since independence, turning agriculture into a burden instead of an advantage. The second problem was severe land degradation. Due to the lack of fertilizer and outdated farming techniques, 25% of Burkina Faso's arable land had become completely degraded. Each year, the country lost an additional 100,000 hectares of agricultural land to erosion and desertification. Compared to other countries in the region, Burkina Faso ranked third from the bottom on the Food Security Index, only above Mali and Niger. This severity meant that 2.3 million people, equivalent to 11% of the population, faced chronic food shortages. The third problem was technological and intellectual dependency. For decades, foreign agricultural experts constantly asserted that Burkina Faso's land was unsuitable for modern agriculture, that the country needed aid and technology transfer from the outside. The long-term consequence was the gradual loss of traditional agricultural knowledge and confidence in their ability to be self-reliant. The opportunity cost was enormous. Instead of developing a strong agricultural sector, Burkina Faso had to export cheap labor and raw materials. For decades, the World Bank and the IMF insisted that market liberalization and importing cheap fertilizer were the only path for Burkina Faso. They produced dense reports on structural reforms, on opening up the market, and attracting foreign investment. Billions of dollars in aid programs were poured in, but they only created a deeper dependency. They were dead wrong. Until Captain Ibrahim Traoré appeared in September 2022 and completely changed the game with a bold declaration: Burkina Faso will become Africa's fertilizer factory within 5 years. Ibrahim Traoré is not a typical politician or a theoretical economist. Born in 1988, he is a 34-year-old engineer with a master's degree in geology from the University of Ouagadougou. Before becoming president, he spent 8 years researching Burkina Faso's mineral resources, especially phosphate, the most crucial ingredient for producing fertilizer. Unlike previous leaders, Traoré understood the immense potential hidden beneath his homeland's soil. The context of his rise to power was on September 30th, 2022, through a coup d'etat enthusiastically supported by the people. Amidst a severe security and economic crisis, with a food crisis exacerbated by the conflict in Ukraine and fertilizer prices soaring by 300%, the people of Burkina Faso had lost patience with the government of Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. The initial reaction from the international community was skepticism and concern, with the EU suspending aid and France recalling its ambassador. When Ibrahim Traoré assumed the presidency, his first message was simple yet full of determination. We will transform Burkina Faso from a fertilizer importer into a fertilizer exporter. This country has enough phosphate to feed all of Africa. But unlike the empty promises of past politicians, Traoré had prepared a concrete, scientific, and achievable plan based on his years of geological research. Phase 1 was a comprehensive survey and assessment within the first 6 months. The specific goal was to create a detailed map of 100% of the country's phosphate reserves, estimated at about 50 million tons of raw phosphate. The implementation method involved mobilizing 200 geological engineers and graduates from domestic universities, using existing geological drilling equipment and borrowing from gold mining companies. The required resource was only $5 million from the state budget, with no need for foreign loans. The expected result was to identify at least 3 large phosphate mines that could be exploited immediately. Phase 2 was plant construction and pilot mining in the second year. Building on the survey results from Phase 1, the goal was to construct the first phosphate processing plant with a capacity of 100,000 tons of fertilizer per year. Scaling up would be achieved by collaborating with Burkinabe engineers who had worked abroad, inviting them back home with competitive salaries. The anticipated challenge was a lack of investment capital, which would be solved by mobilizing funds from the diaspora and reinvesting profits from state-owned gold mining. Phase 3 was expansion and export over the next 3 to 5 years. The long-term vision was to become the largest phosphate fertilizer supplier in West Africa, with 5 plants and a capacity of 1 million tons per year. The international impact would include supplying affordable fertilizer to Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, and Nigeria, helping to increase agricultural productivity across the region. Sustainability would be ensured by reinvesting 50% of profits into research and development and environmental protection. And the most important thing that made all the difference, it would all be done by the people of Burkina Faso, with the resources and intellect of Burkina Faso. No aid from the World Bank, no loans from the IMF, no dependence on Western technology, no need for foreign experts. And then, on March 15th, 2023, the miracle began. March 15th, 2023 will be recorded as the day Burkina Faso changed forever. There were no loudspeakers urging people on, no top-down propaganda, no threats or coercion. There was only a simple message passed from mouth to mouth, from village to village. Burkina Faso needs the hands of every citizen to unearth the treasure beneath our feet. The people's response was immediate and more powerful than anything Ibrahim Traoré could have imagined. In Goma province, where the largest phosphate deposit was discovered, more than 15,000 people from 45 villages voluntarily joined the survey and preparation work. They used hoes, shovels, and simple tools to clear the terrain, build access roads, and assist engineers in taking soil samples. In the first 3 weeks alone, they completed the site preparation for 50 hectares, a task originally projected to take 3 months. The spirit of enthusiastic work, with the elderly and children participating according to their ability, created a true festival atmosphere. In Sahel province, with its tradition of metal craftsmanship, the people leveraged their skills to create simple but effective mining tools. Mr. Amadou Diko, a 67-year-old blacksmith from the village of Dori, shared, "I have been a blacksmith for 40 years, mainly making farm tools for my community. Now I have the chance to contribute to making tools to mine phosphate for our country. This is the greatest pride of my life." A touching detail is that he taught his trade to 20 young men in the village, turning his small family forge into a production center for mining tools for the entire region. The challenge of lacking iron and steel was solved by recycling scrap metal and receiving material support from other regions. In Centro-Est province, home to many educated youths, more than 5,000 students and graduates from universities organized themselves into field research teams. The scale of the operation included 50 teams, each with 10 to 15 people assigned to survey different areas. Their unique contribution was applying modern knowledge to practical conditions, creating new survey methods suitable for the local terrain and climate. They connected with other regions through a communication network using mobile phones and radios, sharing information and experiences effectively. What was astonishing was not just the scale or speed, but the spontaneous spirit of unity among the people. Mrs. Fatimata Ouedraogo, a 42-year-old farmer from Busuma village, recounted, "My husband died from an illness because we didn't have enough money for treatment. My 2 children had to drop out of school to help with farm work because the harvest was so poor. When I heard about the Phosphate project, I knew this was the only chance to change the fate of my family and the entire village. I sold my last cow to buy tools and joined the geological survey. This is not just a job, it is hope for our children's future." But the phosphate mining movement wasn't just about emotion or spirit. It was about science, organization, and operational efficiency that surpassed anyone's expectations. The distribution system was organized in a 3-tier model, the national level coordinated by the Ministry of Mines, the provincial level managed by provincial people's committees for logistics and manpower, and the village level where village elders and women's associations were in charge of specific work assignments. The division of labor was based on expertise and strengths. Young men handled drilling and sample transport, women were responsible for data logging and logistics, and the elderly advised on terrain and local weather conditions. Coordination methods used a combination of mobile phones, radios, and the traditional communication system of village drums. Conflict resolution was handled through a council of elders with the participation of youth and women's representatives, prioritizing dialogue and consensus over top-down decisions. Simple technology included handheld drills modified from well drilling machines, homemade soil pH meters made from available materials, and a basic GPS system using smartphones. Leveraging available resources was demonstrated by reusing equipment from closed gold mines, utilizing the knowledge of experienced miners, and applying traditional farming techniques to determine soil quality. Innovation included inventing specialized soil sampling tools suitable for local conditions and a method for preserving samples using natural materials. Information sharing was done through a systematic word-of-mouth phosphate news network, weekly reports on community radio, and monthly progress reports at village meetings. Quality assurance was ensured by training 500 quality controllers from educated youth, each responsible for 3 to 5 villages. Measurement and tracking used a nationally unified sample numbering system, GPS tracking for each survey location, and a simple paper-based database that was later digitized. Adjustment and improvement occurred through weekly feedback sessions between farmers and engineers, and modifications to methods based on field experience. Transparency was guaranteed by announcing survey results on community radio every week and reporting progress at monthly village meetings. A specific example from Bagre village, Boulgou province, a team of 30 farmers led by Mr. Paul Caboret successfully surveyed a 200-hectare area in 6 weeks. In the first week, they learned how to use pH meters and proper soil sampling techniques from engineer Issouf Diallo. In weeks 2 to 3, they conducted a systematic survey, dividing the area into 45 by 5 hectare squares, taking 10 soil samples from each square at different depths. In weeks 4 to 5, they faced a challenge with heavy rains, flooding some areas, but solved it by building a simple pump from motorcycle scrap parts. In week 6, they completed the packaging and transport of 400 soil samples to the laboratory in Ouagadougou. The measured results: surveyed area, 200 hectares, 100% completed in 6 weeks instead of the projected 10 weeks. Sample quality: 95% of samples met technical standards, 20% higher than the average. Cost efficiency, $50 per hectare instead of the $200 per hectare using traditional methods. Mr. Paul Cabaret shared, "This is the first time in my life I feel like I'm working not just for my family, but for the entire country. Seeing the phosphate numbers in the soil I've farmed for years, I finally understand why the crops were always poor. Now, I believe our children and grandchildren will have a better life thanks to this treasure." August 22nd, 2023 will be forever remembered in the history of Burkina Faso and perhaps the world. It was the day that, for the first time in history, the first phosphate processing plant in Burkina Faso, located in Kaya, successfully produced the first batch of fertilizer entirely made in Burkina Faso. The event took place at 10 a.m., witnessed by thousands of people and representatives from 15 African nations. The significance of the event lay not just in the successful production, but in the fact that Burkina Faso had proven it could be completely self-reliant in a key sector. The numbers speak for themselves. Raw phosphate production increased from 0 tons to 50,000 tons in the first 5 months. Average agricultural yield increased from 1.2 tons per hectare to 2.8 tons per hectare after just one season using domestic phosphate fertilizer. The domestic fertilizer price dropped from $800 per ton to $200 per ton, 75% cheaper than imported fertilizer. Farmers' income increased by an average of 180% compared to the previous year, from $300 per year to $840 per year. Compared to the initial forecast of producing only 10,000 tons in the first year, the result of 50,000 tons exceeded all expectations. But the most impressive figure was not a dry statistic, but the change in morale and national pride. For the first time in decades, the people of Burkina Faso felt they were not a burden to the world, but contributors. Confidence in their ability to be self-reliant was restored, national unity was strengthened through a common project, and the vision for the future became clear and attainable. Ibrahim Traoré, at the Kaya plant on that historic day. "Today, we have proven that Africa does not need anyone to save it. We have enough wisdom, enough resources, and most importantly, enough determination to solve our own problems. This is just the first step. In 5 years, Burkina Faso will supply fertilizer to all of West Africa." But this was only the beginning of a larger revolution. Within 6 months of the historic date of August 22nd, 2023, tangible changes spread across Burkina Faso like magical ripples. Economically, agricultural GDP grew by 25% in Q4 2023, contributing an additional $400 million to the economy. The unemployment rate in rural areas dropped from 45% to 28%, with 250,000 new jobs created in phosphate mining and processing. Agricultural exports increased by 60%, reaching $1.2 billion, for the first time surpassing food import turnover. Foreign investment in the agricultural sector increased by 300%, with companies from Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal coming to learn from their experience. The agricultural trade balance shifted from a $200 million deficit to a $150 million surplus in just 1 year. Socially, people's lives changed visibly, from their diet to their housing. The child malnutrition rate dropped from 35% to 22% as families had more income to buy food. The school enrollment rate for rural children increased from 65% to 78% because families no longer needed their children to drop out to help with farm work. Average life expectancy increased from 61 to 63 years due to improved nutrition and healthcare. The security situation in rural areas became more stable as youth found stable employment instead of joining armed groups. The story of Mr. Seydou Sawadogo, a 38-year-old farmer in Yatenga province, is a living testament. "Before, my wife and I had to borrow $500 every year to buy fertilizer for our 2 hectares of land. The harvest was just enough to pay off the debt and get by. Now, with cheap phosphate fertilizer, I save $300 a year and my yield has doubled. My family's life has completely changed. My children are in school, my wife opened a small shop, and for the first time we have savings. Psychologically and spiritually, the most profound change was in how people viewed themselves and their future. From a mindset of, we are a poor country needing aid, the people of Burkina Faso shifted to, we can be self-reliant and help our neighbors. Trust in the government increased from 30% to 75%, according to a survey by an independent social research institute. Observed behaviors included young people returning to their hometowns from big cities to participate in agricultural projects and the spontaneous formation of agricultural cooperatives. A new culture is forming with Phosphate Day being celebrated annually on August 22nd and learning agricultural techniques becoming a trend among the youth. Visual evidence shows the spectacular change. Satellite images show a 40% increase in green, cultivated land compared to the same period last year, phosphate processing plants sprouting up in 5 provinces, and rural roads being expanded to serve transportation needs. The impact spread beyond Burkina Faso's borders like ever stronger ripples, creating a domino effect across Africa. In the West African region, Ghana sent a delegation of 50 experts to learn from Burkina Faso's model and signed a contract to import 100,000 tons of phosphate fertilizer at a preferential price. Mali and Niger began resurveying their mineral reserves with advice from Burkinabe experts. Senegal proposed the formation of a West African phosphate alliance with Burkina Faso at its center. Ivory Coast invited Ibrahim Traoré to a high-level summit on regional food security, acknowledging Burkina Faso's new leadership role in agriculture. Phase 2, over the next 6 to 12 months, will focus on scaling up production and perfecting the system. The plan is to build 3 more phosphate processing plants in the Oudalan, Soum, and Yaga provinces with a total capacity of 300,000 tons per year. The specific goal is to achieve complete self-sufficiency in fertilizer and begin exporting 50,000 tons to neighboring countries with a clear monthly timeline. Expected challenges include a shortage of skilled labor and inadequate transportation infrastructure, which will be addressed through an enhanced training program and investment in road improvement. Resource allocation will prioritize 60% for infrastructure, 30% for human development, and 10% for research and development. Phase 3, over the next 2 to 5 years, has a much larger ambition: to turn Burkina Faso into the Silicon Valley of African fertilizer with 10 modern plants and a capacity of 1 million tons per year. The vision extends to research and development in biological and organic fertilizers, creating a center of excellence that attracts scientists from all over Africa. The international impact includes supplying fertilizer to 15 African countries, helping to reduce the poverty rate in the region by 50%. Technology advancement will focus on developing new generation phosphate processing technology that is environmentally friendly and highly efficient. Institutional building includes establishing an African Phosphate University and a Continental Food Security Institute. The vision for Burkina Faso's role in the region and the world is to be the center of African agricultural technology, a strategic partner for developed countries instead of an aid recipient. The quality of life for its people will be comprehensively improved with 100% of children in school, an average life expectancy of 70 years, and a poverty rate below 5%. Its contribution to humanity will include exporting a model of self-reliant development, contributing to global food security, and becoming a case study for sustainable development. And most importantly, this model has been proven to be replicable and applicable to any nation or community with the right determination and methods. From Madagascar with its graphite, Rwanda with lithium, to Tanzania with uranium. Each African nation has similar potential if the right approach is applied. Because as Ibrahim Traoré said, The future does not come from waiting for opportunities, but from creating opportunities with our own hands and minds. Every grain of phosphate under the soil of Burkina Faso has waited for millions of years. But only when we have enough determination and take action does it become a force to change lives. The real heroes do not wear capes or possess superpowers. They don't need a PhD from Harvard or backing from some billionaire. They just need hands willing to work, a clear mind, and a heart full of determination and unshakable faith in their ability to create a better future. They are ordinary people like us, but they dare to act instead of just complaining, refuse to wait for the perfect opportunity, and build change themselves step by step, day by day, with perseverance and intelligence. Ibrahim Traoré and the 21 million people of Burkina Faso have proven that nothing is impossible when people unite and are determined. They have turned bold dreams of fertilizer self-sufficiency into a living reality, transforming from a dependent nation into a beacon of hope for all of Africa. If this story inspired you, please like this video so the algorithm can share it with more people and spread the message about the power of self-reliance. Share it with your friends and family to discuss the lessons that can be applied in our lives. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories about human strength and the miracles happening around the world. Comment below to share your thoughts, your inspiration, and the specific actions you will take after watching this video. Let us honor the silent heroes of Burkina Faso and remind the world that the true power to change does not lie in skyscrapers or international conferences, but in the hands and hearts of ordinary people with extraordinary determination. Thank you for spending your valuable 27 minutes following this story about the phosphate revolution. And remember, change starts with you today, from the smallest decisions in your daily life. Just as each tiny phosphate grain can nourish an entire field, each small action of yours can create a big impact on your community and the world.